the Syria. So tell me, what caused the Syrian civil war to happen, and what would you say are the greatest lies of Assad? Because there are many lies that say Syrians hate Assad. Assad oppresses minorities. Syria would be peaceful without him, but yet at the same time, a lot of independent media fact checkers like to point out that Syria has its own central bank. It's free. It frees its citizens of debt. It's got a lot of oil reserves going back to the Goldman Heights, which is Syria, and all that, which belongs to Syria, which it really should be. What actually caused the Syrian? So, like I was saying, what caused the Syrian civil war? What would you say are the greatest lies of Assad, and what would you say is Assad's greatest achievement as president?
When the President Bashar came to power in 2000, all the Western leaders from the United States, from Britain, from France, they all, even Hillary Clinton, she called Assad a reformer, she called him a Democrat. And they had high hopes that after Hafiz al-Assad, his son, will be more open to engaging with the West in a quote-unquote positive way, and that is to accept a peace treaty with Israel with complete disregard of the rights of the Palestinians, for example. This is what they call separate peace deals. The approach of Syria was clear from the 70s that the Arab-Israeli conflict should be resolved in a collective manner and not an individual manner, which means all the Arabic countries come together, especially the neighboring countries, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and they negotiate together with Israel for a just peace that can also be in favor of the Palestinians, so that Palestinians could have a state with clear borders, the Palestinian refugees could come back to their countries. There are millions of them, right? So this was the Syrian approach. The Americans tried to persuade the Syrians. Syria refused it, rejected, etc. So when Assad the son came to power, they thought they can, with presenting him as a reformer, as a Democrat, accepting him in the quote-unquote international community, inviting him to Paris, inviting him to London, rolling him a red carpet, etc. John Kerry visiting him in Damascus, they thought that this will lead to Assad accepting the terms of the Americans, but they were surprised with the 2003 war, for example, with the invasion of Iraq. The position of Syria was very clear against the invasion, and also Syria supported the resistance against the American occupation forces in Iraq. Syria supported the Lebanese resistance against the occupation of Lebanon in 2006. Syria supported the resistance in Gaza against the occupation and the incursion in 2007 and 2008. So there were multiple experiences with Assad, the son, that the Americans were realized that he is more in support of the groups in the region who say they are resisting against the occupation forces of whether it's the Americans or against the Israelis, even by giving them weapons. So the Syrian side opened its military warehouses to Hezbollah, and Hezbollah later delivered many of these weapons to Gaza. And the Cornet rockets, for example, that Hamas and Jihad use, it's from Syria. The one of the rockets and the long-range missiles that Hamas and Jihad has, the technological knowledge of it, it's from a Chinese missile that the Syrians bought from China and then delivered the knowledge to the Palestinians so that they can produce their own in the Gaza Strip. So I think those are the combination of the reasons why the Americans hated Assad, for giving tangible support to the groups, the anti-American and anti-Israeli groups in the region, in addition to an offer by Qatar. Qatar came to Syria 2007, 2008, and they told Assad that they want to extend a pipeline, a gas pipeline from Qatar to Saudi Arabia, to Jordan, Syria, Turkey, and Turkey will distribute them to European market. And Syrians are strategic partners with Russia. So despite the big financial and economic opportunity for Syria, they didn't stab the Russians in the back. And they said, no, we have our strategic partner and ally, Russia, when we're not going to stab them in the back. And if we do so, then Russia will lose the European market completely. Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 will be worthless for Russia. So they rejected. So this was a second factor, in my opinion, why the Americans hated Assad, because they wanted to kill the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 projects between Russia and Europe by giving Qatar this opportunity to bring gas to Europe. So those were the factors, in my opinion, for Assad being an anti-imperialist and anti-American hegemony in the region. Those are the reasons why the American successive administrations wanted to remove him from power. So I argue that they wanted to remove him from power for the sins that he didn't commit, not for the sins that he committed, because Assad, just like any politician, in my opinion, committed mistakes during his presidency, especially on the domestic level. The fast liberalization of the economy, for example, led into big disparities between the middle class and the higher middle class, and many people dropped to the lower middle class because of the free market system. I'm not saying that I'm against it. I'm just saying that the rapid and fast liberalization of the economy led to many people who couldn't catch with the changes that happened in the country. And those were the people later who rose against him when 2011 protests started and the Americans fueled the fires and they started sending weapons. They used these sentiments against Assad to fuel the fire, right? So Americans didn't want Assad to be gone because he was a brutal dictator, killing his own people, blah, 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 all these cliches that they repeat. No, because they wanted to remove him from power because he was not helping the Americans in the region to have an absolute hegemony over the region. And Syria is a very, very important player in the region. And unfortunately, due to the American destructive policy, you can see that Syria is nowadays paralyzed. They cannot really function in the geopolitical hemisphere in the region, and they cannot take their role again because part of their country is still occupied by the Americans. Part of it is occupied by Turkey, and you still have Idlib, which is occupied by Al-Qaeda forces. So I think Assad's decision to fight back against this regime change war, some people argue it is a big mistake. He should have just left power and allow for what is called democratic elections. And others say that he did the right thing for fighting back. I'm one of the people who believe that this was his duty as the president of the country and the head of the armed forces in Syria to fight back, especially after what happened to Libya. In my opinion, if he left the country like Zain al-Abidin did in Tunisia and left his country and escaped, I would have called him a traitor. And I believe that despite the heavy, heavy price that the Syrians paid, there is still a chance for them to regain their sovereignty, their independence, just like 2011 and the era that preceded it, previous of 2011. So, in my opinion, Assad had no choice but to fight. Otherwise, the country would have been in the hands of the Muslim Brotherhood now. And the Muslim Brotherhood are an MI6 agents creation since the 20s of the 19th century. And the Muslim Brotherhood are also a proxy for Qatar and Turkey. So Syria would have been completely under the dominance of the US, the UK, Turkey, and Qatar, were it not for the fight back of or the counter punch of Assad against this regime change war, and with the help of the Russians, the Iranians, Hezbollah, and other allies, Syria managed to foil the regime change war in Syria. They didn't succeed to completely defeat the Americans, but this is a long process. People think that Syria can just kick out the American occupation forces now very quickly. No, this is not how things work. Unfortunately, this is a long process, and the Americans will increasingly find themselves in a situation that their troops are in a volatile situation and they're coming under constant attacks, and they will leave Syria. They don't have a choice. They will leave Syria, but it will take some time. And now we have new reports from the US claim that the Americans are planning on leaving Syria and Iraq in the next few months before the elections. I doubt it, but if they do, that would be a great decision for the Americans and for the Syrians, because what are they doing in Syria is just sadism. They're just occupying the oil fields of Syria. They disallow us from using our oil for heating, for food, for reconstruction, and they also occupy our food basket on the eastern shore of the Euphrates. So, I mean, if Americans leave, I think 50% of the problems in Syria, in my subjective opinion, will be resolved by reactivating and restarting the reconstruction process. Because when you have fuel, you have electricity. When you have electricity, you have manufacturing and factories are working. When you have factories and manufacturing, you have reconstruction. When you have reconstruction, you have jobs and business opportunities. When you have jobs and business opportunities, people will gain money. And when you gain money, the inflation will decrease and the Syrian lira will gain some of its strength back. So this is all in the interest of the ordinary people in Syria, in the country. But if you listen to some of these, they are nothing but agents for the CIA. You know, those who call themselves Syrian opposition figures in Washington D.C., in Turkey, in Qatar. They're not opposition figures. They're on the payroll of Qatar, they're on payroll of Turkey, they're payroll of the United States, and they're pushing more for more severe sanctions against the Syrian people while they sit in comfortable offices and enjoying their six-figure salaries every year, right? So they don't care about the Syrian people.